You're listening to 2012 and Beyond on WSLR Radio in Sarasota, Florida. My name is Emily, and my guest today on the phone is Rosalind Peterson. And Rosalind is the California president and co-founder of the Agriculture Defense Coalition, and also the president of California Skywatch. So, good morning, Rosalind, and thank you for being on the phone with me.
Well, good morning. It's an honor to be on the show with you today.
Rosalind, tell us basically about both of the organizations, Agriculture Defense Coalition and also California Skywatch, and how they both came about.
Well, California Skywatch, the website came about when I decided that I was seeing a lot of man-made skies, persistent jet contrails that were turning into man-made clouds. They were exacerbating global warming, they were changing our climate, and they were having an impact on our natural resources. So I spent the last few years researching, and I put up the California Skywatch site in order to begin to let people know what was going on, let them have an avenue for seeing documents and pictures. And so that was part of my research base in the beginning, was to put up what was happening, questions I had, letters I had, and what I was learning about things like geoengineering, what I was learning about atmospheric heating and testing programs. I started to find information that related with experimental weather modification programs. Later, in 2006, I co-founded with another woman from Arizona, Bridget Conroy, the Agriculture Defense Coalition. And the two of us worked to stop experimental weather modification programs and legislation, which was current before the U.S. Senate in 2006. And now, once again, Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison has introduced a new weather mitigation modification bill that has no prior public notification, no oversight, no public members on their board, and that it allows anyone to modify your weather without your consent or notification or any input at all at this particular juncture. So we're working to defeat this U.S. Senate Bill 601. The Agriculture Defense Coalition also came about as a database for my entire 18,000 PDF file documents of my research going back since 2002. And it will be expanding again in the next week to cover around 32,000 PDF files on things like climate change, weather modification, impacts on agriculture, man-made clouds. It's going to have a whole range of chemicals. Most of the documents you will find on there are government documents, so that you can look at the actual documents, see what scientists, see what NASA and NOAA and Department of the Navy and Department of Energy are doing in certain fields, and so that you can make a better decision about what's going to be coming down both legislation-wise and also that's happening now in our skies, so that you can kind of be able to look and see what's happening in the skies and also make some determinations about those things.
When you talk about weather modification, it sounds very almost science fiction-y. How long has this been going on?
Weather modification has been going on since the early 1940s. And there were experiments in England, there were experiments in the United States, there was hurricane modification. There was a number of things that didn't work out well, so some of the experiments came to ground to a halt after many years. But then in the Vietnam War, we started modifying the weather over the Ho Chi Minh Trail, Operation Popeye, in Cambodia, and we successfully modified the weather to keep that area soggy and rainy almost all the time. And then that led to the NMOD Treaty, which we are co-signer of, which doesn't allow weather modification to be used for warfare purposes. However, in the meantime, many people were interested in experimenting with the weather, So in the last 10, 15 years, there's been more and more interest. So now we have lightning experiments. We have experiments in hail reduction. We have experiments in putting more snow in one place than ever before, like in Wyoming. We have experiments in Texas, in California. There's 60 current ongoing weather modification programs listed by NOAA on the Agriculture Defense Coalition website, and it's also public documents, so anyone can go and do the research and find the programs themselves.
When you say these experiments are currently going on, for example, you mentioned lightning experiments, are these something being done in a controlled environment, or are they actively being done outside in the environment, in the skies?
Right now, the atmosphere that we live in is being experimented upon as a physics laboratory. So anyone can do lightning experiments without our consent. Anyone, and the military, Eglin Air Force Base, for example, does lightning experiments, and that's in Florida. So there's a whole series of things that they can experiment with lightning, experiment with hurricane modification, use any chemical, use any method, and the public has no notification or oversight or control. Not even agriculture producers are told that these programs are ongoing many times.
When we hear jet contrails or persistent jet contrails, is that part of the geoengineering or the weather modification programs?
Both, because what's happening is that any jet that you see that leaves a persistent jet contrail, NASA studies, and you can go to the NASA website and look up man-made clouds, and you can see there are 50, 100 studies or more on the subject. And what they'll tell you is these jets produce man-made clouds that exacerbate global warming because water vapor is a greenhouse gas. They add to the pollutant load because jet fuel emissions, according to the EPA, are highly toxic. And they produce these man-made clouds, cirrus clouds, white haze, and this traps the heat in. So they cause a heating effect. And when water vapor from the jets is combined with other greenhouse gases, then that exacerbates them and makes their impact much worse. The jets with their man-made clouds change our climate. NASA studies show that they exacerbate global warming. And so we're having different effects from jets leaving these type of contrails.
When you say that NASA knows that they exacerbate global warming, has that rung any alarm bells? I mean, are they looking at maybe halting these programs, or is it just they're looking at it just as a side effect, collateral damage?
They're studying it. They know that it has increased between, for example, 1975 and 1994. Patrick Minnis noted that it increased global warming by 1 degree, and each year that they continue with more and more of these contrails turning into man-made clouds, it's beginning to exacerbate the global warming effect more. No one is really talking about this. Even the Cap and Trade Energy Bill, U.S. Senate Bill 1733, only addresses carbon dioxide, but it doesn't address any of the other greenhouse gases, nor does it address the water vapor or these man-made clouds that are exacerbating global warming.
Do we know what some of the chemicals are that are used when they do these contrails? Or these, you mentioned white haze. What does that consist of?
Well, right now the only thing that I can prove is that the jets produce water vapor, ice crystals, and then you have normal jet fuel emissions, which EPA lists on their website. And so you have a combination of pollutants. You have nitric oxide, which depletes beneficial atmospheric ozone, according to a number of scientific studies. You have all of these chemicals, which are highly toxic. And then you add that to the plumes, and so the end result is that you get these man-made clouds. If the jets are spraying anything else, which people suspect they may be, we wouldn't know what that was because we aren't able to do the testing at that altitude. We can only guess.
Yes, there's some schools of thought that even possibly things like Morgellons disease have